I'm ready to go. All right. Hello and welcome to the accommodation support webinar. My name is Aaisha and I'm the accommodation advisor. I sit within the students events advice and events team. And today I'm going to tell you a little bit about the private accommodation situation in Glasgow, so that you can prepare yourself in time for your arrival. First of all, I'm going to tell you about the accommodation support team. We are an advisory service only, and we do not have any properties. So if you are looking for information on on-campus housing, then unfortunately I cannot provide you advice on that. However, you can follow the link in the chat, or you can look up the on-campus housing webpage on GCU's website for information on the on-campus housing. I will provide you some guidance and advice on private accommodation in Glasgow, which includes advice on how to go about it, as well as any other queries you may have, which includes tips on staying safe, information about the areas, kind of properties that you can explore, and anything private property related. Within our team, we run several services which can help you look for private accommodation. First one is the accommodation support weekly update, through which we send weekly newsletters informing you of any property updates that you should know about. If you subscribe to our service especially, then we will tell you if new properties that suit your need or are suitable for students have come on the market, any new news about private rentals that would be useful for students. So just a lot of information that would be relevant for you as a private tenant. We send that to you in a weekly newsletter. You can subscribe to our service by signing up on the form on our website. This is a subscription-based service only. We don't send this newsletter out to every student. The second service we run is finding a flatmate. In this, we have an event during induction, like an in-person event during induction as well, where we make a space for different students who are looking for accommodation to mingle and find flatmates within, get a chance to talk to other students who are also looking for flatmates. But we also run this service digitally. So again, you can sign up to the service and we will connect you with other students who are looking for flatmates. Thirdly, we do one-on-one drop-in sessions. They run every day during term time in the induction period. The exact dates of that will be published on the website closer to September. And they're usually going to be for 6 to 8 weeks from September to October, during the time that students are settling in and are looking for advice. And fourthly, we host webinars also during induction period, such as this one, which can give you more generic information to start looking for accommodation before your arrival to Glasgow. So in private accommodation, there are two types of accommodation that you can explore. One is private halls, and then one is private rentals. So private halls are, or PBSAs, which stands for purpose-built student accommodation. They are privately owned properties, but in those, they function exactly like student halls, but they only house students, and they are usually in high rises. And the thing that makes them special or separate from other private accommodation is that they're functioning as student halls. In Glasgow, there are about 9 providers who have different properties. There are 4 private student hall properties which are within 5 minutes walking distance of GCU. So you will have a lot of variety to choose from. You can choose based on your preferences, on your budget. If you want a list of the accommodation, again, you can just type your email in the chat, or our email is also on our webpage also in the chat, and we can email you with the links to all the different private providers, and you can have a look. Glasgow has 3 universities, so the demand for properties is very high in private as well. So my advice regarding private PA student halls is that as soon as you know you are coming to Glasgow, book something, because that may run out as well. Spaces in private halls may run out as well. And the best way to book something through private halls is directly through their websites and not through any agent, because usually some of the advantages that you get from booking directly you cannot get through an agent. For example, if something goes wrong and you need a refund, then it's harder to get those things, manage those things when you have booked through an agent. So it's always better to book directly. So this was private student halls. The other option is either finding a private room or a private flat which is owned by a landlord, and you can rent it out. So which are called private rentals. It is much trickier to get a private rental, private accommodation while you're not in Glasgow, because usually in order to be able to get something, you need to view it mostly in person. Some agents or landlords allow virtual viewing as well, but that is not recommended. So what that means is that it's very hard to, unless you do know someone and trust someone who can hold that space for you or who can view on your behalf. If that's not the case, then it is likely that you need to be in Glasgow to start looking for places, which means that you also have to budget accordingly for temporary accommodation. So you can stay in a hostel or with a friend or a family member or someone you know for a few days while you look for your own permanent long-term accommodation. When looking for private rentals, there are 2 ways to go about it. You can either look for whole apartments. For that, you will be looking at property websites such as Rightmove, Zoopla on the market, or S1 Homes. On these websites, you will only be seeing full properties. So you'll be looking for either a 1-bedroom apartment or a 2-bedroom apartment or a studio apartment, but you wouldn't be looking for a room to share through that website. And to get the whole property, you will need to have a bunch of documents. And if that is something you're looking for, then you also need to prepare yourself for some added expenses, which will need to be given up front. For example, it is typical that landlords or agents ask for up to 6 months of rent in advance if you're renting a private apartment, which can be a lot of money. So you have to keep that in mind. But if you're looking for a room to share, then you can look at websites such as Spare Room or OpenRent. However, Spare Room and OpenRent are not regulated, so those websites are much trickier to navigate. And again, you need to be thinking about how you can stay safe and avoid getting scammed. And that is mainly where our accommodation support team comes in. So if you see an apartment or see a room that you like and you want to ask anyone who's based in Glasgow whether this is a suitable location, whether this looks like a suitable option for an apartment, then we're here to help you out in that, and try to ensure that you are as safe as possible. So I would say a lot of people also look for accommodation on Facebook. Again, as with Spare Room, Facebook is full of scams. So it's not impossible to find something, but it is very difficult that someone who's not in Glasgow and doesn't know someone will be able to find something which is legit. Now I'm going to give you some tips on how you are going to stay safe, and why you need to be in Glasgow. So you must always view a property, because when you're booking an accommodation through an agent, like a whole property, then that viewing is a condition already on that. You cannot apply to get something without viewing. But if you're looking at a room, then it's even more important that you view it so that you know what is advertised is actually what's real. You can check the landlord or agency and whether they're registered with the Scottish government on the Scottish Landlord Register. The link of it is on our webpage. And you should always remember that in any circumstance, you should not pay by cash. Because when you are making payment through bank transfer, then there is a trail. You can prove if something goes wrong, you can prove that this payment was made. However, if you pay through cash, it makes you an easier target to get scammed. Usually, agents don't ask for cash, so that also makes them a little safer. They're usually regulated by the Scottish government, so that makes it a little safer as well. However, it's more expensive to rent a whole place, so I understand that it's not the best option always for students, especially when students don't have a lot of budget. Which leads me to my next point, which is tips for seeking accommodation is that you will need to be very flexible, both in terms of your budget and in terms of your location. I already mentioned it that if you're renting a flat, then you are likely going to have a lot of upfront costs, so you will need to prepare that in your budget. But even apart from that, Glasgow is a very competitive place for housing. Therefore, in terms of budget, it's very, very possible that you might need to adjust it a little in order to find something sooner. And not just in terms of budget, but because GCU is very central, that means that the properties which are near GCU are going to be very expensive, but my advice is for you to look for properties outside of city center and commute to university, and that way you'll be able to find cheaper options. I highly recommend getting a place with flatmates. Start talking to your course mates as soon as you can, even before arriving to Glasgow. And that way you'll be able to connect with other students who are also looking for accommodation together, which will really make a place affordable. For example, and you can see this as well on different websites. So, a two-bedroom apartment in city center is likely going to cost £1,400 in rent. But when you divide it by two, so if you're sharing with someone, then that will make it £700 per month, which will be very reasonable as compared to if you are looking for a one-bedroom apartment, which will also cost you between 1,000 and 1,400 in city center, but you'll be bearing that cost yourself without sharing. So sharing is the way to go. Unless you have your family with you, then that's a different matter. You can also go to our GCU private accommodation web pages for family accommodation as well as temporary accommodation. I will end with saying that GCU offers a lot of discounts on hotels in Glasgow. So you can go to GCU web pages and write hotel discount, and you'll be able to see what discounts are on offer for hotels, which will really help you in your search for more permanent accommodation when you arrive to Glasgow and you need temporary accommodation for a couple of days. I'm going to end my little talk here. Please, if you have any questions, you can type it in the chat, and I will get back to you. Thank you for joining the webinar. Hi, Zed. I'm good. I hope you're well as well. So for hotel discount, there is a PDF of hotel discounts. I can share the link here, and you can have a look at what is on offer. Um, um, so here's the copy, and this is the hotel discount link. Let me share the link for option D. What is option D? Finding a flatmate. Um, Daniel, yes, Caledonian Court is the on-campus accommodation, but that's a different team that deals with that. You're asking about what areas would I recommend? Because there is a high demand for accommodation, I wouldn't suggest any certain area. When you start looking, there's going to be you're already going to be limited by what's in your budget and what other factors are suitable for you. So you can choose from that. What I will suggest you do is when you're looking at an ad, use Google Maps. So you put the location of the property that you're looking at on Google Maps, and then you set the destination as GCU. And you can see how long it is going to take for you to come to university. If it's going to take you an hour, then that's a not good location for you. Then I think anything between 30 minutes to 45 minutes, including walking time, is a good location. So you are roughly spending, say, 30 minutes on the bus and 10 minutes walking to the bus stop and from the bus stop to GCU. So that is something that can guide your location choice. What you can also do is so again, proximity to public transport is what you should consider mainly in when you're suggest looking at different areas. So GCU is very close to a bus station, subway station, and a train station. And it is very central, so it is close to even Glasgow Central Station is 15 minutes walk away from GCU. Therefore, if you find somewhere, say, even in Paisley, which technically isn't in Glasgow, but it is only a 10 to 15 minutes train journey, so that would be a good location for you. And that would mean that you are paying much less. Another thing that you can consider is, and Glasgow has a subway route, and one of the subway stations is very close to GCU. So if you find a property which is near any of the subways, that would be a good option for you, to a good area for you to choose. Faustina, as an international student, it depends on the accommodation that you're choosing for pre-arrival. If you're going for private halls, then you need to pay in advance. And again, remember to book directly through their website to avoid any difficulties. But for private student halls, you will need to pay in advance. For private rentals, like a room or an apartment, renting privately from a landlord or an agent, it will be very difficult for you to even secure something without arriving in Glasgow. So therefore, you still need to pay in advance before moving in. but you will need to view it in person. So if someone is asking you for advance without you having viewed a room or a private apartment, then that seems unsafe and sounds more like a scam. I hope that answered your question. So Zed, like I mentioned, there are many areas which you can consider within which might come in the budget of 500. What, but it doesn't mean that anything will be available at the time that you're looking. So have the transport guide let be the guide for um what area you choose to stay in. There's South Side, there's the East End, there's the West End. So all of these areas are good areas. But anything that is easily commutable to GCU is what you should consider. This is what I meant by you should be flexible in terms of where you're looking, because it is very likely, for example, that I say to you that Denniston is a good place to look at, but there might not be anything available when you start looking. So you should see what's available and check the distance from it from the university. Transportation costs. I can't give you an overview, but I can tell you that you can get student discounts, and you can get a lot of different student deals on discount. It depends on, so the single day ticket for a bus is £5.90, but it doesn't. You may not be using the bus. And then the train ticket will definitely vary based on where you're living. But I can tell you is that you can get student discounts on all the buses, and you can get a rail card for a student discount on the train. So you will be able to manage transportation costs. Once you have decided or secured an accommodation, then you can again check the prices online for how much your commute is going to cost. I think most students on average use around pay around £200 on transport in Glasgow who are commuting to and from GCU. But that can vary according to your area. So GCU can help. We can't. We are an advisory service, so we can give you advice on how to secure a private accommodation. What kind of help is it that you're looking for in securing private accommodation? We can tell you what documents you'll need. We can give you advice on whether this is a suitable accommodation or not. However, GCU does not act as a guarantor, and we cannot look at properties on your behalf. So, because you're an advisory service, so there are limitations to our support while a student is not in Glasgow. But we can definitely guide you to make the best choice for yourself. For anything that isn't clear in the webinar, and if you want any additional information about anything that I've said or even anything that I haven't said, you can email me at accommodation.support@gcu.ac.uk, and I will be more than happy to help you out. If you want to book a one-on-one accommodation support drop-in, I'm happy to do an appointment as well. This is the email that you will go for. If you can't remember this email, all the ways to contact us are on our web pages as well. Thank you for your time today, and we hope to see you at GCU soon.